yet another important milestone. Yes, 300th episode is here. And folks, I'm super excited to share that The Guiding Voice is one of the very few interview based podcasts across the globe with over 300 episodes. However, my goal for this year is to cruise into the global top 1%. And on that note, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to all our speakers and audience for encouraging me to take this journey forward after launching the very first episode on May 17th, 2020. With your encouragement, we have also launched TGV Telugu last year, and which has already crossed about 32 episodes. And while we speak, TGV Hindi is being launched. A big salute to all the TGV community members. And today we have a special guest on this occasion. We have hosted him in 2021 on episode 64, where he shared wonderful insights on dreaming big, which is still amongst the top 10 episodes all time on The Guiding Voice. Arvind Chaturvedi is a business and IT leader with over 30 years of experience gained through success in organizations operating in the public and private sector markets. He has proven ability to manage organic and inorganic growth and operate large multifunctional teams. He has demonstrable achievements in IT transformation, change management, tracking, and delivering measured benefits. Also, he holds consistent record of commercial success in growth and turnaround situations. So for those of you who are not aware, I was fortunate to work under Arvind. He has been a great leader and I admire him for all his humility and all the encouragement that he provides to each and every employee. And he is one of the best bosses with whom I've worked so far. This is The Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. Friends, I'm your host Naveen Samala, just a fellow IT professional on a mission to make the world a better place to live. And through The Guiding Voice, successful leaders and inspiring individuals across the globe share their insights with the world, and our audience will acquire more knowledge and wisdom for every minute than any other podcast in this space. Because we drive conversations that matter and conversations that add value to your life and to your career. Thank you so much for joining me. And we are extremely pleased to have Arvind back in TGV's virtual studio. Arvind, I'm super excited to host you part of our 300th episode. Thank you so much for being part of our journey.
Naveen, thank you for that very warm welcome and a great introduction as usual. It's a pleasure indeed to be back here. I know the Guiding Voice has gone places over the time since when I first had the opportunity to come and talk to you to where it is now. And many congratulations to you and the team for that. I know you've launched a book as well recently. Congratulations for that as well. I'm sure, it's going to go from, one milestone to another. My best wishes to you and the show and the entire team.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Arvind. On that note, first of all, I would like to appreciate you for proposing this important topic. The moment I asked, what are the topics, right? So recession-proofing your career, this is something very important. And really people are curious to understand how to recession-proof their career, right? As the world braces itself for the tough economic times ahead, that question that looms large in everyone's mind is my job recession-proof? Right. So what is your take on that, Arvind?
Yeah, certainly, Naveen. I think, firstly, I suppose a message of hope to a certain extent, and then probably a message of little despair as well on the back of it. So let me take it one step at a time. Firstly, recession is inevitable in the cyclical fashion that it keeps coming, and the world has to deal with it, really. There are various factors that result in recession happening eventually, and those factors, take time coming together to actually lead us into that economic downturn that recession represents essentially. So it's the reality of life, But the recession that might be experienced in one economy versus another would be very different. For instance, if I talk of India as an economy, likelihood, from everything that I've read, I'm no economist or a specialist at this at all, but from everything that I've been reading around this, the better informed, the experts tend to suggest that while we might have recession and recessionary effects in India, it will probably impact our growth in terms of slowing down our GDP growth. But we're not likely to really go into a slump. And
Yeah.
that's great news. That's great news. So, firstly, all those listeners out there who are probably wondering what's going to happen to them, you have hope. We have hope collectively. We need to make sure that we understand that it is to different degrees that recession will have its effect. And yes, there will be the ripple effect of the economies of the West, certainly so. But even so, I think we got a strong economy, strong economic growth that we've shown over the last few years, and we will continue to sustain that to a great extent. Not at the same level as we did last year, but probably there or thereabouts. So good news for you. Now here's the message of despair. To answer the question that Naveen asked, unfortunately, there's no job that is truly recession-proof. Okay, that's the reality of life as well. As recession is the reality of life, this is also reality of life. But there are jobs out there, which sort of continue to have demand irrespective of the economic, conditions that one is thriving in at the time. Jobs like the ones in healthcare, ones in education, law enforcement. All of these jobs, the human society always needs these. So, they're probably least impacted by recession to a great extent. IT over the last few decades has sort of got into that segment as well. Many IT and computer related jobs now are continuously in demand and hence probably to a certain extent recession proof. But in the end, when an economic downturn happens, everybody is impacted to some extent. The people who prevail through it are usually the people who've been creating value on a consistent basis. That's the important thing, irrespective of which job you're in. Because every job, however recession proof I might call them out to be in this conversation, in the end will result in some amount of hit being taken by that group of jobs or that career as well. And in those circumstances, people who have created value through all the good and bad times that have preceded the current times that we're talking about will be the ones who will prevail, whose jobs will actually be seen as valuable and will be held. Unfortunately, all of us are guilty of one thing, which is we stop looking at ourselves through the value creation lens. And that's complacency, actually. We are all guilty of that, irrespective of who we are, what we do, how many years of experience we have. At some stage in our lives, in our careers, we have all been guilty of that and will continue to be in the future as well. And that's where we lose the confidence. We lose the confidence whether we can prevail or not. Yep. But it's never too late to get started on that, actually, my friends. That's the important thing. You can rather than panicking or living in the fear of the worst happening, what you could do is start looking at the outcomes you created up until this point. See how the real and perceived value of those outcomes, what the real and perceived value of those outcomes is, in the context that you serve, and see whether people will see you as a high value, indispensable individual. That is wherein lies the trick. You have to put that lens and see yourself through that lens in a very objective fashion. That will tell you truly whether your job is recession-proof or not. You are the best judge of that. I'll leave it in your good hands. Naveen, does that answer your question?
Absolutely. So creating value, which is often overlooked, right? How am I adding value to the organization? That is the key takeaway, which everybody has to keep in mind to be recession-proof, right? So as you said, we cannot assure if somebody's job can be recession-proofed and all, right? So nobody can assure that. Even the board of directors or the head of the organization can assure that. But as an individual, how should one prepare for recessionary times? Like, are there any suggestions from your side, Arvind?
Yeah, so it is the preparation is ongoing. As I said in my previous response that I gave you to a previous question, right, Navid? The preparation starts from the day you start your career. Yep. In creating that value that you reiterated based on what I said earlier. Yeah, and that is what is the most important part. Whether you're focused on creation of value, that's the important thing. That's where your preparation starts. If the ecosystem that you operate within, sees you as a value adder, if you like, a contributor to a large extent, and then if you're seen as somebody who's constantly bringing value in everything that you do, then the likelihood is that the demand, the continuous demand that I talked about earlier, the demand for you in that job as a person will always remain irrespective of the prevailing economic conditions. You will always be wanted, essentially. Yeah. That's the important thing. It is about, keeping yourself relevant. One has
Yeah.
to remain relevant in terms of skills, in terms of proficiencies, in terms of outcomes that you created. One has to keep asking yourself, am I creating value in everything that I'm doing? Yeah. Is there anything that I can do differently or better, to make sure that I bring the most optimal, even maximum value in everything that I do, to my customer. Staying focused on the customer is a great way of always being value focused, essentially. Now, I won't go into the depths of who's the customer, what's the customer, etc. That's for you to decide in your own context. Right? What does the customer mean in your context? But knowing your customer and understanding who your customer is of paramount importance for you to even start creating value in the first instance. If your understanding of who the customer is misplaced, then the likelihood is that your understanding of what constitutes value is also misplaced. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what the customer is, who the customer is. You have to get into a place where your customer feels that your contribution is indispensable. Once you get into that position, your relevance is established. And if your relevance is established, trust me, you're recession proof in every respect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's therein lies the trick. I mean, always keep learning, developing your skills, be absolutely clear on what skills you need, what skills you're short of, what skills you need to build because the industry is trending in a certain manner. Make sure that you are looking at what are transferable skills, what are the soft skills, one of the clear skills that is of utmost importance in the current times is one of adaptability. People who are most adaptable are likely to be the most people who are most liked by the organizations and employed by the organizations, essentially. In times of change, that's what you need. Organizations need people who are adaptable.
Yep.
So focus on everything. Don't be indiscriminate in terms of what skills you're looking at. Don't just focus on technical skills or job skills. Look at soft skills. Look at all the transferable skills. If the worst happens and if you have to change your career to do something else, if you have transferable skills, your next set of employers will find you valuable. That's the important thing over there. So make sure that you're looking into all those aspects.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry, Naveen.
And so the key takeaways: be indispensable and be the linchpin of the organization while being adaptable. Right. So keep on learning continuously and make sure that you are staying relevant to the times and relevant to the job. Is that the right summary, Arvind?
That is absolutely the right summary. And one more thing to add, just to build on
Yeah.
that, Naveen, just to make sure that people understand this. When the times, unfortunately, while like I said earlier, preparation is best done ahead of the economic downturn happening. Most of us start thinking about the economic downturn when it starts happening, essentially. And that's the reality of how we are wired up. Unfortunate but true. Okay.
Yeah.
But all is not lost if you've not been through that journey of preparation ahead of the economic downturn. All is not lost at all. So you have to trust and believe in that completely. One of the things that people miss out on is, what do they represent? What does an employer look for in a resume?
Yeah.
Our resume is usually a chronological diary of everything that we have done, where we have been, when we have been there, and what is the role that we have played. The key thing that we forget all the time is, what did we accomplish? What difference did we make to that organization or to that context within which we were operating? What are the supporting metrics that suggest that we actually created some demonstrable value? That's lost in your resumes. This is the time, my friends, to start sprucing up your resume. Put it through the so what test. I call it the so what test. You've been somewhere, played a role, and been there for a certain length of time. All well and good, but so what? Did you just exist there? Is that good enough? No. You got to ask yourself the question: what did I actually do? What did I bring to the table? How did I change the context? How did I affect the context positively? And that's what needs to show in your resume. The moment you start putting that on your resume, trust me, my friends, your resume then is a powerful tool that you're carrying in your hands, and will bring you employment irrespective of what happens to your current employment or not, as the case might be. Okay, so you got to focus on that. The other important aspect is, this is also the time when you pick up your networking, because referrals, trust me, get you better opportunities than any raw search that you do in the market or standard application process that you go through. Okay, because referrals are from people who know you, who know what your strengths are, who know where you can play to your strengths the best. And when they connect you into something, a job context which demands your skills, your likelihood of success is that much higher. You're likely to actually go through the interview process with much more, with a higher percentage of success, essentially. And when you do land the job, your success is probably going to be higher as well as compared to any other job that you might land from the standard application process. Increase your network. Go out there. Go to the industry events. If you have to spend some money doing that, do that. Okay. But that's money well spent, because there you'll connect with people, you'll get to know people, you'll expand your list of contacts. Those contacts will come to your aid. You will again feel empowered and strengthened in the wake of everything that's going on otherwise outside of your control. And you can only do things that are in your control, right? Everything, macroeconomics is outside of any of our control. We all have to live within that. That's a context that's created by world events. You and I can make very little difference to it. The only thing we can do is make sure that when those events start having an impact, we're in a state of readiness. And these are things that I'm talking about in state of readiness. The other important aspect, Naveen, sorry, I'll dwell on this for a bit more if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead.
Because I know your audience is, there are a lot of young people in there. Your financial well-being is very important as you head into an economic downturn as well. Don't underestimate the value of that, because if you're financially not well, that itself will put immense pressure on you and put you into that state of, despair and pessimism, if you like. So, how do you go about doing that? First of all, stop spending like there's no tomorrow. Okay, be more judicious about what you spend on, how you spend. That's number one. Number two, take care of your debts. Clear as many of your debts as possible, including your credit cards. I know, today the world lives off its credit cards, but, some of us are old timers. We believe in clearing your credit card at the end of the month. Trust me, it's the most peaceful place to be. Okay, mentally speaking. Lastly, be creative and hyper-focused on your savings and investment. Okay, be creative about it, because, you got to see how can you maximize return. And you can't go and take undue risks in austere times, in a state of economic downturn. But there are safe investments, and that's what I mean by being creative. Don't follow the masses. Don't say everybody is going and doing this, so I'll also go and do that. Think for yourself and say, does that make sense for me? And if that doesn't, what does? And make a savings and investment in that regard. And then you will feel that peace of mind, which will then allow you to focus on building a career. Okay, because you're not worried about one aspect, one very important aspect, which is keeping your life running. Okay? That's the one that distracts you the most when a recession happens and a downturn happens. Take care of that, and then your mind is open. Lastly, always be optimistic. Naveen said he and I have worked together. It's been a pleasure having Naveen work with me. And I can tell you, the one thing that I saw in Naveen and have always admired about him is a sense of optimism. And we've been through some desperate times when Naveen and I were working together. I can tell you that. Okay. And what I liked about Naveen, and I've said this to him several times, and I'm saying it in the podcast for everyone to know now, is the smile on his face. That never vanishes. And that comes from confidence and optimism. Optimism that in the end you will find a way to actually fix things. And you guess what? That's the kind of people that organizations need when an economic downturn is happening. Nobody wants an overcautious blocker of progress sitting there. Nobody wants somebody who's obviously always going to give the obvious answer. No, we shouldn't do this because it's hard times. Organizations need people who can think creatively, think strategically, think optimistically to actually drive progress despite the times. And if you retain that optimism, that's good for you as an individual, that's good for your family and friends, whoever is dependent on you, and your organization will value you that much more. You will have created that relevance for yourself. So think about these things. There are various other things that I can keep talking about. I'll wait for Naveen to ask the next question. Naveen, back to you.
I think these are some profound thoughts, and you have explained it so well, covering various aspects, not just the skills, but the finance part, and also being optimistic and all. I think this episode is going to immensely help and boost that particular confidence that is required in people. So thank you so much for those pearls of wisdom, Arvind. And thank you for the kind words about me as well. Now, let's go to your favorite topic, which is growth. I still remember our offsite sessions and all. At least you used to do one session on the career growth and all, right? So I would like you to share with our audience as well. What does this growth mean and how does it happen?
Right. Okay. So growth is a pretty misunderstood concept. Let me start by saying that everybody has their own perception of what growth means, and I've asked this question to several people, Naveen, and I get some interesting answers. There's nothing right or wrong about those answers. Those are individuals' perspectives on growth, but they're interesting. How people perceive growth, and there is a pattern to that as well, which is something I have sort of made my personal mission to try and dispel as much as possible. It's created a myth in people's mind, especially young people's mind, which I would like to dispel as much as possible whenever possible. So I'm going to use your platform also to do that, if you don't mind, please.
Absolutely.
But let me start by answering the question that you asked. What is growth? It is actually just a state of mind, a condition of increasing, developing, maturing. That's what it is about, And then there are various kinds of growth. There's personal growth. Personal growth is about, being more positive in your thoughts, being less, having a better control on your emotions, not indulging in procrastination, laziness, being open to learn new things and skills, having a growth mindset. That's personal growth. That's what personal growth means. Then there's professional growth, which is entirely focused on gaining new skills and new work experience, which can actually help you reach some of the goals in your career, essentially. So that's professional growth, which is about skills and work experience to achieve certain goals that you set for yourself. Yeah. And then comes the big question about career growth. What does career growth mean, right? So career growth is just a journey towards your big vision that you got for yourself in your career. Now, don't despair if you don't have a vision. As if you're very young and you still not have even if you're not so young and you still don't have a vision for your career, that's okay. That doesn't make you any lesser person. It doesn't make you, put you at a disadvantage at all. There's no better time than today to sit and think about what I'm going to be. Okay, and do that as soon as you can, as soon as you think it's the right place for you to be. And actually, we were talking about recession. Recession is a great time to think about that, by the way, because recession is also an opportunity for you to reinvent yourself. Okay, so if you're not thought through what your career vision is, maybe now's the time. It's a good time, as good a time as any other, probably a better time than many others, when you'll be in the rush of abundance, when you'll be getting offers from all around, and you'll sort of get drifted into that as opposed to thinking about what your career needs to be. So there's a great opportunity in that sense. But those are various forms of growth. Now, I said that is perhaps the most misunderstood concept, because my concern is that most people, especially young people, based on the inputs that they've got through the initial stages of their life, look at growth in a very linear and a very incremental fashion. Okay. For them, everything is about climbing the so-called the proverbial ladder. I keep joking about this. You introduced me as somebody with over 30 years of experience. And trust me, my friends, whoever's listening, my entire audience of the show, I've yet to find that ladder. As I keep joking, the only ladder I know is the one in my store, which I climb to change the bulb. That's the only ladder I know. There is nothing such as a ladder out there. Don't think of it, because the moment you start thinking of it in terms of a ladder, you start thinking linear, you start thinking incremental. Okay. People who have achieved heights in their life have not achieved by thinking incremental or linear. They've been very non-linear in their thinking. They've been very multidimensional in their thinking. And they have believed in radical growth, where they believe that they can actually go from one place to another, take that leap and succeed at that. It's their belief, it's their faith. They've taken that leap of faith and they've succeeded. That's why they've got to where they've got to. Okay. Look at any of the contemporary leaders of, whatever industry you are in. Okay. Look at any sports personalities. Look at any, fine arts personalities, musicians, singers, etc. They took a leap of faith. They had the belief that they could do this. If they had been thinking linear and incremental, they probably wouldn't have been where they are today. Okay, very likely. So the one thing I want to dispel, Naveen, through your platform, if I may, is this myth about the ladder, this myth about a linear and incremental growth. Today I'm a programmer, tomorrow I'll become a senior programmer, then I'll become this and that and the other. I'm talking in the IT context because you and I are IT folks, essentially. Okay, that's true about any other industry as well. That's not how life works. That's not how growth works. The other important part of growth, again, a misunderstanding. Growth doesn't happen because somebody else wants to grow you. Growth
Yeah.
happens because you want to grow. You have to engineer your own growth. Okay, there's nobody out there who's more interested in your growth than you are. And if you are not interested in your growth, trust me, nobody else is. Okay.
Indeed.
So you got to be thinking about how you intend growing and then engineer that growth to happen. Okay. And how do you engineer that growth? Again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, creation of value. Now, when you're in a certain role, there's a certain value expectation that the organization or the context within which you are, the ecosystem within which you are, has from you in that role. There's a value expectation. Okay. When you start creating value beyond the expected value, that's when you set yourself up for growth. When you create value beyond the expected value, you're creating inordinate growth opportunity for the ecosystem, and the ecosystem then rewards you back in terms of your individual growth. That's how it works. Now, forget that your manager doesn't like you, or forget that your manager does like you. None of that is going to impact your growth negatively or positively. I assure you of that. What's going to impact your growth negatively or positively is your intent to grow and your ability to actually engineer that. So think about, what is the value expectation from me in this role that I'm performing currently? How can I expand that? One thing we tend to forget always, and I'm sure Naveen has heard this from me in some context in our previous lives when we were working together. I say this often, so I'm sure Naveen you've heard this, but we forget that the whole ecosystem is a connected system. It's a connected ecosystem. It's a value chain. We are part of a value chain. Okay, whatever we do, whatever our roles, and when we start identifying with the value chain, we know how to extend our value beyond the expected value. So go and understand that value chain, my friends. Understand what part of that value chain are you in your role. What link do you form? How can you start impacting the broader value chain? The ecosystem will come and reward you with your growth. Thereby. That makes sense? I'll pause at that.
Excellent. Now let's talk about the biggest obstacles for this growth. One thought that resonated with me is many times people think about vertical path or the linear progression, and the other one is my manager will take care or my super boss will take care of my growth. Those are certain things that come to my mind. But other than that, based on your experience, what is the biggest obstacle to growth?
I'm going to say something which I'm sure most people will not like hearing, but the biggest obstacle to your growth is you.
You
really. Oneself is the biggest obstacle, and that might sound a bit paradoxical, right? Because I said, who wants to grow the most? You want to grow the most, yeah. And yet I'm saying that you're the biggest obstacle to your own growth. How does that work? We got to dwell on that a bit, rationalize that a bit to understand how it really works. And the way it works, Naveen, is that unfortunately, when I say you, it's actually your inhibitions and your fears that get in the way of your growth. Okay. What you tend to do is you tend to start defining yourself too early. And I worry about this world of specialization that youngsters grow up in these days, especially. But one of the things that happens is that people start thinking about what do I stand for? What skills do I have? What am I qualified to be? What knowledge do I possess? And based on that, start putting some boundaries around them. I'm an IT engineer. I know this. I can only do this much, and this is what I've learned, and this is what I have experience for. Yeah, maybe I know somebody. I know Naveen. Naveen has experience with this, so maybe I have some borrowed experience in that as well. But that's my area of what I define as my knowledge. Okay, and we start binding ourselves within that. And that's great, because then you're absolutely sure of what you know. But the fact is, there are things that you don't know out there. However, you can always get to know them. You can always learn those things, because knowledge is flowing constantly. If your receptors are open, then there's nobody who can prevent you from knowing what you need to know, learning what you need to learn to actually be what you want to be. So the limitations that we put around ourselves in terms of qualification, in terms of knowledge, in terms of experience, in terms of what my friends think I can do, what my family thinks I can do, and all of those things, that creates a space within which we are absolutely fine. We'll never go wrong. We'll absolutely be successful in every respect. But unfortunately, because of the boundaries that we set around ourselves, we're not going anywhere from that space. That space is what's called comfort zone, by the way. Okay. So you sit in that comfort zone, you're not going anywhere. To actually grow, you have to break the boundaries. To break the boundaries, you need to get over your fears, your inhibitions, your limitations that you put around yourself. Okay. A famous line that I heard in a dialogue of a film recently, actually, which I loved. It was beautiful. It went along the lines that there wouldn't be any butterflies if they didn't break the boundaries. That I thought was beautiful. What was the dialogue, right? I don't remember, but which film also I don't remember. But I saw that recently in the last few months, essentially, and that has stuck in my head. There would be no butterflies if they didn't break the boundaries. And if you want to be that beautiful butterfly, you want to fly, then you got to break the boundaries. The choice is yours. There's nobody out there apart from you who's holding you back. The only person you got to convince that you need to grow is yourself. Once you're convinced about that, you'll be on the path. Naveen, does that answer your question?
I love the dialogue. If there were no, but if they didn't break the boundaries, there are no butterflies. In fact, butterflies are a great story of transformation as well, right? In digital transformation and business transformation, where we see that caterpillar to butterfly transformation image everywhere. All right.
Metamorphosis, right?
Yeah.
Nature's biggest transformation, metamorphosis. That's
Indeed.
where it happens. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. So beautifully explained, Arvind. Now let's talk about your career growth. What are top three things that have contributed to your career growth?
I think we've spoken about most of it, Naveen. So maybe some of this will be repetitive, but maybe a reminder as well for people who
Yeah.
missed something that I
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
earlier. But first and foremost, hyper focused on value creation. Okay.
Yeah.
A question that I constantly ask myself is what I'd said everybody should ask leading up to the recession in our previous segment that we were talking of. Am I creating value? What value am I creating? Can I create more value? Am I at the optimum or maximum value creation? In terms of my contribution that I'm making. Yeah, that's a challenge you got to pose to yourself. You have to be looking at things, looking at yourself through that lens constantly. Okay, and that's been the way of life as far as I'm concerned. Make yourself that. I'm sure many of you have heard this from your leaders wherever you work or whoever you've associated with. But there's a lot of talk about 5x, 10x contributors essentially. Make yourself that, and then really the ecosystem will be behind you, trying to grow you through life. So that's number one. The other thing that I talked about in terms of breaking boundaries and breaking your inhibitions, be a learner. Don't be limited in terms of what you think you know. If you keep your receptors on, like I said earlier, if your receptors are tuned in, there's knowledge flowing from all around. The trick that we miss is keeping ourselves open-minded, keeping our minds open. That's the trick that we miss. So keep your minds open to learning. Learn in whichever way you find learning the easiest. I mean, I know as a teacher from the past that everybody has a different method of learning, different way of learning, different speed of learning, etc., etc. That's all good. Having one method or one pace of learning doesn't make you any better or any lesser than anybody else, as long as you're prone to learning. That's the important thing. Last but not the least, my response to Naveen's previous question about what's the biggest obstacle to growth: shed all the boundaries. I said this probably. I don't remember, Naveen, but I may have said this when we talked about dreaming big when I last spoke with you on your show as well.
Indeed.
But shed all the boundaries. Be
Yeah.
versatile. Be adaptable. Be willing to take risks. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have the confidence to take the leap of faith every now and again. And that's when radical growth happens. So make sure that you're thinking along these lines. The top three, I don't know whether these are top three or not, Naveen, but these are three that came to my mind as you asked the question. So there they are. There you are.
All right.
I've been if you ask my wife, she'll tell you I've been a serial risk taker. And she's been the pillar of my life, quite frankly. So I'm thankful for that eternally. But, I've taken some might say stupid risks in life, but there was a confidence and they paid off.
Yeah.
So, but you got to take those chances. Like I'm sure you've heard it from others as well, but I certainly believe in that. Luck happens to those who make it happen. So you got to take risks. You got to be there when the opportunity is there. Grab it with both hands. and do what you need to do to actually make sure that you come out successful. Yeah, and that's the trick to growing, according to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if
So
that helps.
absolutely. So just to summarize, it's first focus on the value creation, be the 5x or 10x contributor, be a learner, don't limit yourself, and set all the boundaries. Be versatile, be willing to take risks, be adaptable, and all. Yeah. Great nuggets of wisdom, Arvind. And on that note, let's add some spice to the episode. If you're okay, I'm going to ask you a few interesting questions so that our audience will get to know other side of you, Arvind.
Okay, well, hopefully they'll not be too tricky. Naveen is all I can hope for, and hopefully I can respond in a manner which makes your episode interesting. So here we go. Let's
All
go for
right,
it.
yeah. Let's dive in. Have you ever slept in a classroom, Arvind?
No, as far as memory serves me, yeah, but I have slept in a very big meeting after a very long and heavy night. I will spare myself the embarrassment of giving the detail of that, but it was embarrassing. I mean, I literally was dozing, and I was told eventually snoring as well. So
My God, I can imagine that.
I blame it on the long and heavy night that preceded that meeting, essentially. So there we go.
All right, let's move ahead. Have you ever walked out of a movie halfway?
Yes. My wife and I both are guilty of that. Absolutely. When it starts becoming, quite frankly, unbearable, that's when we walk out of a film. We've done that more than once. I see it as, I define it slightly differently. I say there's an intellectual plane that at which we operate, right? My wife and I'm talking because generally she and I are in the films together, go and see the films together. So we operate at a certain plane. If the film is too much below our intellectual plane or too much higher than our intellectual plane, then it gets beyond us, quite frankly, and we walk out. So guilty as charged. A few names come to mind straight away, but I'm not going to name and shame any film. But
Yeah,
you
makes
know,
sense.
there are times for certain. Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. And can you describe yourself in just one word?
um, Actually, I'll use the word that my wife uses to describe me. She calls me rational
Wow.
more than anything else. Yeah.
Mm.
So, and I agree with that because I tend to rationalize almost everything in life. I say almost everything because faith and love I don't rationalize. I rationalize everything else.
So powerful. And here comes the bomb. Did you ever steal anything from anyone?
Okay, that could mean several things to several people, right? I mean, what does stealing mean? So it's a loaded question. Not that I'm aware of. No, and hopefully there's nobody out there who remembers such an instance and says I'm a liar. So if that is the case, my apologies. My memory fails me, but I can't think of anything. And I'll take stealing in the literal sense and no other sense at all.
Sure. And here comes the last one, Arvind. What is the worst gadget that you came across so far? Worst gadget or technology which you felt, okay, maybe I shouldn't have bought this, or why the hell did they invent?
I'm sure there's a good reason to invent even the worst gadgets. People find a reason, and that's that's why they go and invent what they invent. The good thing, Naveen, is I've never bought anything that I've regretted buying.
Ah,
Essentially, I'm very clear, and I'm not a gadget guy in any case. You know that. You and I have
yeah,
been together. We've been friends. We've been friends. We've known each other for a while.
yeah.
I've not been a gadget guy anyway, but like I'm a hardcore Apple lover. I
Yeah.
carry some 4 or 5 Apple devices on me all the time, as you know. I've never regretted carrying those, to be honest. But not too many other gadgets apart from the household stuff. Yeah, but there are things that I do believe I would love that they were invented and they
Mhm.
came about.
Oh,
The
sure.
one thing that has always intrigued me is the idea of flying cars.
Mm.
I'm a person. I'm an unfulfilled aviator, by the way. Okay, I wanted to be an aviator at some point in my life. That still remains a little, thing that I probably would want to do at some stage.
Mhm.
Essentially, I don't know whether I'll be able to do it or not, but that's where I am. But if there were flying cars,
Yeah,
that would solve that problem as well. You see. So
absolutely.
while I've not come across a gadget which I felt shouldn't have been invented, because I'm sure there's somebody out there who believes it is a good reason to invent that. That is something that I'm waiting to get invented, which is flying cars.
I'm sure it might happen in the coming decade.
I've seen it.
Right?
I'm sure you've
Yeah.
seen it and read about it in science fiction, right? And I believe
Yeah.
that the science fiction of today is the reality of tomorrow. That's how it
Yeah.
translates.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm banking on that theory of mine and hoping that will come true.
Yeah. Same with me. Yeah. That was amazing rapid fire, and thank you for wonderful spirit. And with that, let me flip back to the mainstream and ask you one final question for today's conversation, Arvind. What are the qualities that you look for in a future employee, and why? Before you hire, right? What is one key thing that you look in?
Yeah, no, great question. I think the biggest one for me, or biggest two qualities for me, are curiosity and creativity. The moment I talk about creativity, people start thinking of fine arts, performing arts, etc., etc. That's not true. Creativity is possible in any skill that you possess, any profession that you are in. Okay, and I'm looking for your curiosity, and I'm looking for your creativity. Curiosity and creativity put together, add up to innovation.
Yeah.
And that is the need of today's times. We need to constantly innovate. Every organization needs to, every team needs to, every individual needs to. Yeah. And those are two main qualities that I'm looking for. Apart from that, I'm keen on, looking out for ambition. And ambition can be dangerous as well if it's over ambition, right? So ambition in the right, measures in the right sense, if you like. That's what I'm looking out for. So why? Because that drives the growth mindset in the individual. And I believe every leader should have a vested interest in the growth aspiration of the people who work for them. Yeah, I certainly do. And the reason for that is that if your people are passionate about growth, then you can be certain that your organization is set up for growth.
Yeah.
That's how it works. So I'm looking for ambition as well. I'm usually listening in more to the questions that the candidates are asking than the answers that they're giving to my questions. Okay, because I want to, for instance, understand: are you truly looking to understand the role for which you're being interviewed? Okay, do you have a point of view on what that particular role should be about, or how it should be designed, or for the business at large, if you like, what it needs to be like? Yeah, do you have a point of view on that? That's what I'm listening in for. So that's very important. Of course, there are always the standard skills like communication, teamwork, assertion, all of those things one certainly finds desirable. But if I look at top three or four things: curiosity, creativity, ambition in a measured manner, in the right manner, and your point of view on things. That's what I'm looking out for, really. Does that give you enough?
Indeed, I loved every bit of it, and in fact, this is the perfect episode for a 300th milestone, right? So I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm highly confident that this will be one of the biggest episodes all time in the history of the Guiding Voice. And thank you so much, Arvind, for everything. And it's indeed a pleasure to talk to you. Always, I look up to learn something or the other, and you always come up with some profound thoughts and also, which is so intriguing. And thanks again for being part of our journey, and thank you for being a great will-wisher of this platform. And without support of people like you, we wouldn't have come this far.
No, I think first of all, thank you for inviting me. I love coming and talking to you, Naveen. Even when you and I talk more personally in conversation, I love conversations with you. You know that, and it's no different here on your show now. Absolutely enjoy it, and I absolutely was looking forward to this episode after you and I agreed on me coming and doing this. Hopefully, it's been of value to all your audience. Thank you for all your kind words in response to everything that I've said. And happy to be there for any other time that you want to be here as well, Naveen.
Absolutely. Yep. I think you have to come back to us once in a while and inspire our audience. Thank you so much once again, Arvind. Yeah. So, folks, that was our enchanting conversation with Arvind Chaturvedi, and a perfect milestone episode, as I told earlier. And before we move into the trivia section, here's a request: you please subscribe to us in case if you haven't done already. Also, if you have loved the episode and found the conversation useful, request you to share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who can benefit from the Guiding Voice. Thanks in advance. Now, let's hop into the trivia segment of today's episode. Today, we started our conversation with Arvind on how to recession-proof your career. So I thought I'll present you some facts about recession. And here comes the question: How often do recessions happen? And as per an article from a prominent business magazine, since 1857, a recession has occurred on average about every 3 and a quarter years. And it used to be the government felt that letting recessions burn themselves out was the best solution for everyone concerned, because we can control certain things which are within the locus of control and external factors cannot be managed. However, since World War II, we have gone an average of 58.4 months between recessions, or nearly 5 years. And the last economic expansion started at the end of the Great Recession that lasted 128 months. And by that measure, we were overdue for an economic retraction when the pandemic recession has hit. So that's why many of us are so cautious about our careers and all, and this episode is brought to you keeping in view of the recession, the so-called recession which is said to be around the corner. Let's hope for the best, but I'm sure you'll find some value in this particular conversation, and even if at least one person can benefit out of this episode, that would be great. That is a thought process with which we have been running this show, and thank you so much for all the love that you guys have been showering on the platform. And that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining me once again. And please share your topic recommendations and guest speaker suggestions through social media, or email me at theguidingvoiceforyou@gmail.com. I'm your host, Naveen Samala, just a fellow IT professional, but a passionate learner on a mission to make a difference in the lives of millions across the globe. Until next time, bye-bye.